Hello from Palmdale City Library. My name is Robert Shoup. I'm the Director of Library Services here in the city of Palmdale, and we are excited to continue this program recently begun. Uh, First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about the library. If you're not aware, we are reopening to, and by the time you see this, as this will be posted later in June, we will be expanding our hours, our public service hours, to our pre-COVID schedule. So as a reminder of what that was, and will become again starting on June 7th, we will be open to the public from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, and then 1 to 5 on Sundays. So we welcome folks back. Of course, we'll be here to answer the phone as well, and we have lots of services and resources available on our website. So as a reminder, please check our website for updates, but also you can access all kinds of useful information there as well as entertaining information. You can download music from there to your device if you're not aware. You can do that. 5 songs a month for free on your device with your library card, for as an example. So just want folks to be aware, and we look forward to hosting this program and others in the library in person, maybe as soon as August. We're waiting, as many are in the state, for the updated health order to come out from the state. And again, by the time this posts later in the month, we will have that information. But we do look forward to hosting in-person programs again. This program we are calling Building Bridges. Palmdale City Library supports the arts. And briefly, I want to introduce Jamie Lee Beck, who is the sound technician today, and she's the assistant director here at the library. And thanks, Jamie Lee. And very happy to introduce Jesse Davidson, who is our partner and facilitator for this program, and our special guest, Tre Balfour. And I'm going to turn it over to Jesse, who will take it from here.
Thank you, Robert. So, this series, Bridge Builders, is to highlight some of the talented artists and creators, writers, musicians, anybody in a creative medium in the Antelope Valley. And the origin of that name came from a song written by our first guest, Ian McCarter, written in tribute to a local musician, Joel Hatcher, who passed away. And the message of that song was to say that we are all bridge builders and that we can all be examples to each other to lead the way, inspire positivity, and just be overall a positive source of information for our community in one way, shape, or form. So, to continue with that tradition, I'm very proud to have our next guest coming into this platform. His name is Tre Balfour. Tre, for those that don't know, he is the band director at Littlerock High School, and among other things, has toured with Michael Bolton and Color Me Bad for the past 10 years. And I believe the name of your lecture today was Drumming Through Life and Life Through Drumming.
Reverse.
Okay.
Life through
So,
drumming through life.
okay, so before I screw anything else up, I'm going to turn it over to Tre, and he will sort of give you his philosophy and perspective and outlook and experiences learned from a life of music. And I believe there's a lot of life lessons to people who aren't in creative fields that could be learned from that. So without further ado, Tre, take it away.
All right. Good morning, everyone. First of all, let me just make one correction, Jesse. Out at Little
Go
Rock
for
High
it.
School, I'm not. I It's Gary Gregg is the head director over the big picture, and I'm just the director of marching band and anything moving. Percussion ensemble, guard. So I have to shout out to Gary Gregg, my dear friend. He's which you need to get him on here too. You know,
Absolutely.
he's a great resource. But with that being said, life through drumming, drumming through life. How that started was after I moved from Oklahoma City, I started teaching in a local music store called the Music Center, and the guys at the time they saw something in me that I didn't know that I had, which was a love and a passion of teaching, because I would go in and show them things, and on the pad with one of my dear friends who's passed away, Randy Roberts, and we would hang out. And at the time when I moved out here in '92, Tommy Lasorda was the Dodgers manager. And I didn't really like baseball. And I see Tommy Lasorda being interviewed, and he says, to me, baseball is a way of life. And I'm like, that's not my life. I don't like baseball. Are you kidding me? But it wasn't until I started teaching at the music store, trying to get to kids, and I was applying life experiences to drumming. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, oh my gosh, this is what Tommy Lasorda meant. He said, to me, baseball is a way of life, not to anybody else. And I reflected on what he said, and I connected what he was saying to his life. Not that I was walking in his shoes or anything, but okay, I understood. So then I started analyzing my life, and I would approach things as if I were drumming in life. Okay? So let's say, for example, if I'm driving down the 14, and I use this all the time, tons of analogies and examples. I'm driving down the 14, and I'll tell a private student or either the kids at Littlerock, if the speed limit is 65 or whatever it is, and if you're doing 50, well, you're dragging, you're slow. But if you're doing 85, okay, you're rushing. You want to stay at least on that speed limit, because if not, there's going to be a price to pay. And then I tied that in. Okay, well, if I'm a drummer and if I'm rushing or dragging, either or, it's going to be a price to pay. I'm going to get looked at like I'm crazy, get talked about, lose the gig. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Yeah. Okay. So I started looking at things like that. And at one point, I thought, well, okay, well, let me, I'm making the correlation between the two, tying those in. Now, let me bring that into drumming. Okay. If I were to sit at the kit with a child or a student, whomever, and 9 times out of 10, if they were dragging, especially if these are kids, if they're dragging, I would turn to the parent and I would say, this child right here is lazy. And I just call them right on it. They're just like, he's got a messy room, bed isn't made up, he's not, of course, I'm not as harsh, but I'm getting the point. I'm giving them the point, and they're taking it. And they're like, you're absolutely right. How can you tell? I'm like, well, because they're dragging. It's showing a sign of laziness. Not that they can't do it, they just have to do it, and they have to be disciplined to do that. Okay. So, sorry, that was the plumber.
It's all good. I had the door opening at the beginning of this. You got the plumber there. This is a real life conversation.
This is a real life. And you can probably hear my neighbor's truck across the street. Can you hear it?
No, I was gonna say I'm not picking it up
Okay.
in the headphones, so we're
Okay, good.
good. We're good.
You know. Okay. So uh I'm able to see what the individual needs, what the student, where they need to make the adjustments in their life. Behind the drums, if they're rushing all the time, 9 times out of 10, they're rushing. I'm like, hey man, look, check this out. You're gonna have to slow down in life. You're gonna have to like smell the roses. Take your time, you know, as far as playing with dynamics. You know, a lot of kids or students just want to play blah, 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 blast. Wait, hold on, easy. Would you want someone to yell at you all the time in a conversation? No, you wouldn't. So let's just have dynamics. Crescendo, decrescendo.
Yep.
Let's make that conversation exciting. Let it breathe.
Yeah. And if I could interject something just for a brief second, it's
Yes.
about intention too, because a lot of these kids aren't thinking about intention. So if you're going to push something as far as, that speed limit's 55 and you want to go 57 or 58, or bring it back and go 51 or 52, you're aware that you're doing it and you're bringing that to
Exactly.
their attention.
Exactly. So, that philosophy has followed me, and even Littlerock High School in the music department, we, made that work, music, life through music, music through life. Because, not everyone there are percussionists, obviously, and it's a beautiful thing. It really is. And it has helped me also as a producer, songwriter, giving, the songs that I produce, they have space. They're able, it's able, the song's able to breathe. You're able to individually pick out things, vocals, lyrics, you know, and there's a pattern to it. I'm a drummer, I'm a percussionist. I see patterns. Even with I tell this to the beginning percussionists out at the school. I take them outside and I let them, and once again, life through, and I tell them life through drumming, drumming through life. Okay, let's look at the life. Let's look at life right now. Let's go outside, and I let them know. Okay, rhythms, they're patterns. So let's just look at the patterns out here in this quad. Do you guys see any? Just look around, and they're just, you know, oh, the bricks, bingo. Okay, do you see any more? Yeah, the rails. Okay, what else? Uh, Jake's shirt. Oh yeah. Okay, what about my shoes? The laces, the patterns. So now they're able to distinguish patterns and understand, okay, we're drummers. Patterns, rhythm. Then I take it one step further. I'll take them into the band room, and I used to wear a watch, and I would line the metronome up with my watch. Beep, beep. And they're seeing the second hand lined up with the click on the metronome. And I asked them, what do you hear? hear the metronome. What do you see? I see the second hand moving with the sound of the metronome. Yes. So the job of a drummer is to keep time, no matter what. So they're able to understand and realize, okay, patterns, rhythm, drumming, time. Okay, let's go. Okay. And that's it. Good night, Cleveland.
That's great. And I think for kids, and I know this is always helpful for me because I figured out in my musical brain, I need to have something to relate it to visually. And so, and I think for kids or even students or anybody starting out, if you can
Yeah.
give them that symbolism, because everybody knows what a watch looks like, everybody knows what a clock looks like. And there's quite literally a timekeeping element there. And so automatically when you make that correlation, you can pick up on those patterns.
Right.
And
They make the connection. They
yeah.
make the connection.
And more importantly, you are building, this is something that, you know, what I want to do through this series is that at a certain point I figured out through my practice and, you know, playing with people like yourself and, you know, working with other professionals is that music and life are this, you know, and who you are as a person, you know, it's one and the same. It translates into your instrument, and as you improve into your
Yes.
instrument, it changes who you are as a person. And when you really decide, you know, I want to take my playing, my musicianship, my career to a professional level, you have to do so much digging into yourself, you know, to over the blocks that you need to overcome as a musician are the blocks that you have as a person. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what were some of those in your career, you know, more life lessons that you would have, or, you know, some of the first lessons that you were exposed to in this area?
For me personally,
Yeah.
you know, I would have to say uh the the main thing was the discipline. Just learning how to be disciplined uh and have a regiment to where, you know, I try not to be mediocre in anything I do. Okay, mediocrity, I it doesn't exist to me. It's for me. Okay, and that stems from music. Uh, you call it wanting to be the best you can be, or whatever, but it's like I want it to be the best Trey that Trey could be. I don't want to be the best Buddy Rich or Chris Dave or Tony Royster. Or, no, because that's their best. I'm How am I to compete with them when I'm not even them? You know,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
that's their thing. So I have to be my best and use my voice to express myself. If someone doesn't want to use me for that, for being me, fine. I'm okay with that. But I'm still going to work because someone is going to like my voice.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. And thankfully, that was something I learned in college early on. And a buddy of mine who has sort of a direct way of approaching things like you have.
Mm-hmm.
There was another bass player that was a really popular bass player in school, and he was going for the same performance ensemble class that I was at Antelope Valley College. And I was really nervous because he was already in this class for years, and they don't normally take two bass players at one time, you know, because that's normally just a one person job, right?
Right. Right.
And so, yeah. And so I was like, oh, I don't know if I could audition for this. I'm not as good as this person. And then my friend said, well, you will never be this person. And he didn't mean it in a derogatory, he said it very
Right.
bluntly, but the matter of fact was he has a whole separate set of life experiences and a whole list of things that make him who he is, just as, like you were saying, we all have with ourselves, the
Right.
experiences that make us, the skill sets that we have, the perspective that each of us has is completely unique. And it's knowing where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, who you aren't, where the areas are that you can improve on and get better, that you want to add on to all of that. And in some ways, I wish that that could be applied to life. And I think that the good part about you being a teacher is that hopefully these students can take these examples and then apply it to whatever field that they're going to eventually be involved in, whether it is music or not.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know, it. I here's a story. I've been in this business and in this field for 26 years, and in the music business probably 35, and I'm only 27. But anyway, um, there was a young lady that was attending Paraclete High School. She transferred, and I was teaching her privately. She transferred to Palmdale High School, and then she transferred to Little Rock her junior year to march with me. I'm like, okay, wow. She went from private to public to another public school just on her journey to get to me. Well, she she was in marching band, she was in drama, she was in choir, 4.0 GPA, and was in the Palmdale Playhouse, community playhouse. Graduated, went on to Cal State Santa Barbara, 2 years there, transferred to University of Utah, graduated magna cum laude, was the commencement speaker, came back, gave me her sash. I wept. When I was on tour with Bolton, she had relocated to Brooklyn, and we were performing in Brooklyn. I got her to the show, introduced her to the opening act, a young female by the name of Kelly King. They became friends. Kelly's manager hooked her up with a job, and about, I would say, a year later, she calls me from her job. She says, Trey, you'll never guess who's sitting across from me. I'm like, sitting across from me? What are you talking about? She's like, well, I'm at a talent agency. I'm working there. I said, okay, who's sitting across from me? She's like, Andy Garcia. So, granted, this young lady grew up in Juniper Hills. And when I would tour with Bolton, I would leave Little Rock and come back, and I would tell the kids, hey guys, the world is your playground. It's bigger than this area. Trust me. And I can vividly remember her looking up at me and just taking every word. And to know that I was able to touch her like that, change her like that, just, I'm like, okay, this is why I do this. All the kids get it. They get it. It makes them better. Whatever you want to call it. And it's just planting the right seed and nurturing.
Yep, exactly. And I was going to say nurturing and enriching were the two words that came to
Yes.
mind to me, because I think that's the big stigma of music, or it can be, is that if it doesn't necessarily translate into a career or a skill set, then some people may think, well, what's the point if you're purely looking at statistics on paper? but it's a matter
Right.
of these experiences can translate into so many different things. Like you're talking about seeing patterns, recognizing rhythm. And then at a certain point, you can realize, well, life has its own rhythm to it. And it might not be to a
Yes.
tempo, but it's going to have its own rhythm. And so I think
Exactly.
it, all of these moments are critical too. And also, expect or perspective expanding, like you said, because some people might not realize that, or think that they have the potential to go to a university to, do all of these different things. And I feel like this is something I was just talking about yesterday, as a matter of fact, at a library meeting. We were talking about that, um, just basically wanting to connect youth of the valley to where they grow up. If they grew up in the Antelope Valley, if they have teachers like yourself and experiences like this with music, they foster a better connection with their community. And it's not just a place that they were forced to endure for, up until they were 18 and could leave. They're going to be like, well, that's my home. I might
Yeah.
live in these other places, but that's home to me. And music really establishes that in a way that other things may or may not do.
Right. No, no, you're absolutely right. You just you know what? I'm glad I said that. You thought it, but I said it.
Well, it's true. It's absolutely true. And
Yeah.
I imagine now, because you've had your position there for as many years as you've had, that this is a common thread among teachers in the valley who have been out here a long time. And not to name drop, but I feel like for the community you can do that. Like Lee Madelon, staple in the Antelope Valley,
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
generations upon generations of kids being taught by Lee, and other
Mm,
instructors as well, and people who've been at Antelope Valley College, high school band directors,
right.
like you, Gary, Mr. McQuilkin at Quartz Hill High
Mhm.
School. It's all of these people that have this
Absolutely.
impact on kids. And that's
Yeah.
something that you're directly witnessing as time's going on. And you've
Yes.
followed up with a lot of these former students, and how would you say that their lives are enriched, not just the one example of the person you were just talking about?
Uh, You know, well, I can tell you just like the example of Allie, the young girl that was I was just mentioning. Uh, you know, they're enriched by ways that to me are never ending because a lot of the times these kids, it basically is attitude reflects leadership. Okay, so a lot of these kids that are being directed from, and I'm just talking about the high school level, the feeder programs, great, band directors there too. uh, my colleagues are the high school, we're talking about that. So you've got these kids that are being influenced by these directors as role models. We are actually their second parents, okay, because we spend majority of the time with them. So we're going to rub off on them, okay, and they in turn will be productive members of society. And I hope that answers your question.
Oh, it does. It does. And that was something else I wanted to ask you about too. It's an environment in music where, especially when you get out into the world of the music industry, you literally meet people from all walks of life, different social backgrounds, parts of the world, that
Mm-hmm.
are all coming together to do one thing. And you find the common denominator in everybody that you're working with. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that you get along with everybody, but as opposed to somebody who stays in a static background, I've met people from South America, I've met people from Europe, I've met people from Africa, I've met people from Asia, different parts of the world. I met people all different, genders, orientations. But we're all coming here for the same purpose. We're all a little off. We're all, we're all maybe weird in our own way, but we all intensely love whatever this thing is. Whether you're creating music, you're a technician, you're anything. And I think that that's one lesson that I hope that people can gain from music as well. And speak to your experience about that, just as far as the sort of diversity and just sort of to give people an understanding that might not be aware of like that kind of environment.
Okay, repeat that question again. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Just speaking to the diversity that overall society and our community and just anywhere in general can learn from the diversity of music, because there are so many people from all different walks of life that are all, we find the common denominator in that we all love what we're doing and we all love music and we have a passion for this thing, and that overcomes these other characteristics about ourselves, where we're from, what we look like, etc., things like that.
Oh, okay. I'm still not following your question because I've got the plumber here.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
We're passing each other notes.
Yeah. So,
and my brain is doing.
well, so for example, for my column in the AV Press, I've interviewed I've interviewed your bandmate, Josh McClanahan. Yeah, and so in talking to Josh, you need a second?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. Like I said, this is a.
I got you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Hey, life happens. Life happens. So, to give my point a little more context here, backtrack a little bit. In my column for the AV Press, I interviewed Josh McClanahan, your bandmate, who was also an early music teacher of mine at Mel Booker Music.
I'm so sorry you had to deal with Josh.
I love the back and forth, but I love the back and forth. Every time you guys are in a room together, I want to start playing the Odd Couple theme, just to give people insight on what's going on here. So that's the relationship that Tre and Josh have, which I have with, I'm a bass player. That's the relationship I have with my drummer as well. So I understand.
Now, here's the funny thing. I love Josh. He's like a little brother that I never wanted, right?
Yeah.
He used to be one of my students.
Yeah.
He used to be one of the students in Littlerock High School, man.
Yeah.
I love Josh. That's my guy. But sorry, go ahead.
No, that's full circle. That happens.
You had to bring him into my world. You had to bring that.
I did, and for good reason. I have merit here. I'm about to back this up. Exhibit A. Here's the evidence I have. Right. So when I was talking to him, he was talking about his travels, because he played in sort of corporate cover band situations all over the world. So he's been to Dubai, China, Japan, Europe, all sorts of places around the world. And he was talking about, I asked him a question on how we can improve relations among people in our community from different backgrounds and walks of life and have more compassion and understanding. And he was relating it to the example of that he's played with people and interacted with people from all over the world. And any issues or, divisiveness that could come up is usually overcome by the fact that everybody is really talented that he's playing with, and there's the common denominator of they're all really good at and they love music. And so it can eliminate a lot of that strife that happens. And I just think that you being a teacher, you foster that in people with the examples you're talking about. And I guess to speak on that, maybe speak about, the lessons in compassion and empathy and understanding that could be learned from playing in a band together and working in an ensemble.
Okay. So, now I see where we're going with this. Okay. So let me just say this. When I first got to Little Rock High School, the demographic was African American, Caucasian, and Hispanic. The student population was probably 2,500. if not more, because they had 2 lunches. Okay. And I sat back and I watched a lot of racial tension, okay, lack of a better word. And I saw it wasn't a lot in the band. However, sometimes you would sense something. And I had to basically actually go in and tell the kids, okay, look, if we believe that there's a God, a Heavenly Father, okay, do you guys believe that? And they're like, absolutely. Okay, great. And I told them this, and this was so beautiful because, kids are smart. They can use their reasoning. I asked them, did they believe the account of Noah and the ark? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, okay, great. So I asked them, well, who survived? Who was on that ark? They said, well, it was just Noah and his family, his sons. I'm like, very good. Bravo, bravo. And then I hit him with this. So life as we know it now started from them again, not Adam and Eve. It started from them. So using your reasoning, we're all related. And you could hear a pin drop on the carpet. Okay. And it was the most beautiful thing to see these kids like, okay, why are we tripping? Okay, hold on. This is my brother. This is my son. It elevated their mentality, not only from a spiritual or from a musical, but to a spiritual thing now. And they respected each other even more. And I would always see, just to me, it's not really a color issue people have. It's more of a cultural issue that people have. Okay? And once we are able to understand each other's cultures, okay, why does a culture do this? Why does a culture do that? That's when we're going to be more receptive and loving.
Yep. And you can notice the patterns.
See?
Yeah.
Through drumming through life, Big Daddy.
I was going to say, when we first started playing together, it's like you could look at it like, well, what am I going to relate to this person who's half my age, who, is like,
and that's younger. Half your age younger.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
Right.
You could look at like that situation and go, oh, I don't relate to this person at all. But it's that understanding of, well, let me see where this person's coming from, on both directions. And I've learned more from adapting to those kind of situations and approaching something like, okay, well, I'm playing with Tre now. Like, he's, a drummer in a band that I regularly play in. Okay, well, I'm going to take the time to like talk to you, like figure out what kind of music you like. I'm going to, feel things out while you're playing. Right. And then on moments where it hits and, we're locked in, it's like, oh, well, this is great. There it is. Exactly. And I found that, like, when that happens and the audience experiences that, everybody is together, and it's an indescribable thing. And I think the reason why we're so passionate about that is because we just want to.
Already, man.
Oh, I know. We just want to share that with everybody. You know,
You know what?
it's
Wait, hold on. I have to tell this story,
go for it.
and it's it's so beautiful. And this just goes to, you know, give what you're saying concrete, evidence of. I remember you and I, we were uh, at a establishment playing on the boulevard, and a friend of yours, another drummer, Dave, came
Yep.
out.
My Josh.
Right, your child. Exactly. The brother that you never wanted. you know?
Yeah,
And
but I love him dearly. Yeah.
absolutely. So do I, man. But he sat there, you know, and with his seat backwards, just checking us, you and I, out. And when the set was over, I forgot what we closed on, but he had never seen that side of you. And from your performance, just digging in at that time, you know? And I remember him jumping up and saying to you, see, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I need from you. Blah, 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 blah. And do you remember that? You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
And it was, and I thought, this is something that Jesse and I have. And it
Oh
was
yeah.
captured in that moment
Yeah.
with you taking the time to understand me as a whole, me taking the time to understand you as a whole, then musically, and taking it to that next level, and that next level to the apex of where we could go. And that was the outcome, to where it touched somebody and it touched him.
Yeah, and I think summing that up, it doesn't matter because you can attest to this too. You've played big gigs with Bolton and Color Me Bad and huge environments, and you've played on the Boulevard, and small little, jazz clubs, small, restaurant gigs. You've done everything, but that feeling is universal,
Oh
you know,
man.
and it doesn't have to come out in an articulate point, but it's that someone could just yell out a spontaneous "woo," from the audience is like, oh, we're doing it.
We're doing
We're
okay.
yeah,
There
and
it is.
and breaking that down, I would articulate that as like it's the apex of your potential in that moment. It's all of
Yes.
the preparation
Oh,
and the practice and the blood, sweat, and tears you put into something, and then it's working, and then people are feeling that, and
and,
then when they feel it, they let it out,
and,
and
well, let me just interject something.
yeah,
And that can't, you can practice that, but on the at the other end, it may not, you may not be rewarded. So it all depends on that right moment, that right, when you touch them, when you touch, and like I said, just with the diversification, we come from two different cultures. Okay. Two different, you know, as far as the age gap between us, you
yeah,
know. But however, we made it work. We
yeah,
are, at that point, we are one. But it's like a marriage
yep,
in union with that music. There's no color, there's no age, there's no gender. It's just music and
yep,
touching people.
yeah,
And that's what I love. And that's what I think, um, people people need that. And
yeah,
if, I don't know of any other substance, in any other outlet that can touch people like music, not sports, not academia, to where, it, okay, here you go. Music evokes emotions. There we go.
Yeah. Well, and I would say too, I don't know if this fits into your drumming philosophy with the overall message that you teach on this, but for me, I always look at it as I'm serving something bigger than myself. And so it's either the audience, my bandmates, the environment, overall the craft of it, because that was a lesson I learned early on from one of my mentors is he used the word I asked this person who was a touring sound professional that I met, I said, what do you think makes a great band? Because he was working for some top
Mm-hmm.
bands and had been in the industry a long time. And he said, well, I think it's somebody you watch them and you can tell they've mastered their craft. And I wouldn't say that am even close to that yet, but it's a matter of
Same.
I'm working, you're always a student. So you're always looking to, you are in the face of things that are much bigger than yourself. And so if you take that in the right way, it's a humbling thing. And then so when you can share that and put it out there and have it be returned to you from the audience, and then it creates a loop, and then by the end of the night, if things are going well, then everybody is elevated, and it's a phenomenal thing. It's you can't really describe it.
Man, you're making me want to play now.
I know you got the kit behind you. I was gonna say.
You're right.
I was gonna say this is always 10 feet away from me at any given moment. It's like, come on, we're almost there.
Dude, and I've got my new kit, man, and it's just like compact.
Oh, dude.
And
I know. Well, before we get carried away and start a Zoom jam session, I want to wrap this up with one last question. So yeah, let's just say, so if you were to talk to somebody or somebody who might be watching this who has no musical background or has not been a very creative person or expressive person but wants to apply these principles, how can you apply drumming through life to somebody that is not a drummer or necessarily even a musician?
Okay. What I would do is I would ask them what is their passion. Because like me, when I first heard Tommy Lasorda say, to me, baseball's a way of life. Whatever.
Right.
In hindsight, it was just like he said to him, baseball was a way of life. So that was his passion. Drumming is my passion. Other people, another individual, it could be sewing or football or academia or whatever. But I would say, let's start with what is their passion. What is that individual's passion? Then the same concept and approach that Tommy Lasorda did, what I did, I would guide them to let's tie your passion into life and your life into that passion. Now,
Yeah.
I can only speak for me. My passion is drumming. I don't know the passion of a carpenter or a plumber who was waiting for me to sign stuff. I don't know his passion. Poor guy. And so I don't know plumbing. I don't know it. So, but I do know how to educate and I do know how to guide people. And I would start with that and making the connection.
Yeah. I think if people can have something in their life outside of whatever their career is, if that's not their passion or whatever job they have, if they have something that they can put themselves into that is bigger than they are, you know, and a pursuit that
Yes.
is humbling and
Yes.
requires you, and if this is possible, requires you to interact with other people, you know, like football. If you got together once a weekend to play football with your buddies or watch football or whatever it is, you're doing something like you're going to a local game or something like that. It's
Yes.
all of some anything like that that connects you and you can find those patterns again to use that reference. I think that overall that is a more humbling approach and leads to a more compassionate approach because you recognize I don't know. I think it just overall rounds you as a person. And I think that hopefully people can take some of your experiences and these lessons in this conversation and hopefully apply it to their own day-to-day life here in the community.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah,
Need it.
we do. We absolutely need it. And hey, oh, what were you going to say? I don't want to cut you off.
And you know what else we need on top of
Mm.
that? A little chili sauce.
That's Trey's term. Anytime we're gonna really make something funky and really go for it on a gig, it's just making it a little spicy for those.
Spicy there, baby.
Yeah.
Chili sauce, Lord.
Trey, it's always an absolute pleasure to hang out and talk with you. And
Yeah,
now that things are opening up, hopefully we can get on that music thing sooner rather than later. And
yes.
do some more things for the library, do some more community events, man. We'd love to have you participate in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely, Jesse. I got your back, man. I got your back.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Trey. And thank you to everybody
for having
watching this. Yeah. Thank you for everybody watching this series, Bridge Builders. We will be doing one of these at the end of every month. And keep an eye out for any upcoming events that may be announced at the library, any programs that could be coming up there. Thank you again to Robert Shoup and Jamie Lee Beck for recording this and for just facilitating these programs here at the library. We appreciate you. Thank you so much and have a great day.